This is breaking news.
America's marriage material shortage. Perhaps you've heard. Young people aren't dating anymore. News media and social media are awash in commentary about the decline in youth romance. It's visible in the corporate data, with dating app engagement taking a hit. And it's visible in the survey data, where the share of 12th graders who say they've dated has fallen from about 85% in the 1980s to less than 50% in the early 2020s, with the decline particularly steep in the past few years. Naturally, young people's habits are catnip to news commentators. But although I consider the story of declining youth romance important, I don't find it particularly mysterious. In my essay on the anti-social century, I reported that young people have retreated from all manner of physical world relationships, whether because of smartphones, overparenting, or a combination of factors. Compared with previous generations of teens, they have fewer friends, spend significantly less time with the friends they do have, attend fewer parties, and spend much more time alone. Romantic relationships theoretically imply a certain physicality, so it's easy to imagine that the collapse of physical world socializing for young people would involve the decline of romance. From the February 2025 issue, The Anti-Social Century. Adults have a way of projecting their anxieties and realities onto their children. In the case of romance, the fixation on young people masks a deeper, and to me, far more mysterious, phenomenon. What is happening to adult relationships? American adults are significantly less likely to be married or to live with a partner than they used to be. The national marriage rate is hovering near its all-time low, while the share of women under 65 who aren't living with a partner has grown steadily since the 1980s. The past decade seems to be the only period since at least the 1970s when women under 35 were more likely to live with their parents than with a spouse. People's lives are diverse, and so are their wants and desires and circumstances. It's hard, and perhaps impossible, to identify a tiny number of factors that explain hundreds of millions of people's decisions to couple up, split apart, or remain single. But according to Lyman Stone, a researcher at the Institute for Family Studies, the most important reason marriage and coupling are declining in the US is actually quite straightforward. Many young men are falling behind economically. A marriage or romantic partnership can be many things: friendship, love, sex, someone to gossip with, someone to remind you to take out the trash. But practically speaking, Stone told me marriage is also insurance. Women have historically relied on men to act as insurance policies against the threat of violence, the risk of poverty. To some, this might sound like an old-fashioned, even reactionary description of marriage, but its logic still applies. Men's odds of being in a relationship today are still highly correlated with their income, Stone said. Women do not typically invest in long-term relationships with men who have nothing to contribute economically. In the past few decades, young and especially less educated men's income has stagnated, even as women have charged into the workforce and seen their college graduation rates soar. For single non-college educated men, average inflation-adjusted earnings at age 45 have fallen by nearly 25% in the past half-century, while for the country as a whole, average real earnings have more than doubled. As a result, a lot of young men today just don't look like what women have come to think of as marriage material, he said. In January, the Financial Times' John Byrne Murdoch published an analysis of the relationship recession that lent strong support to Stone's theory. Contrary to the idea that declining fertility in the US is mostly about happily childless day-and-kiss, dual-income, no-kid couples, the drop in relationship formation is steepest among the poorest, he observed. I asked Byrne Murdoch to share his analysis of current population survey data so that I could take a closer look. What I found is that, in the past 40 years, coupling has declined more than twice as fast among Americans without a college degree compared with college graduates. This represents a dramatic historic inversion. In 1980, Americans ages 25 to 34 without a bachelor's degree were more likely than college graduates to get married. Today, it's flipped, and the education gap in coupling is widening every year. Marriage produces wealth by pooling two people's income. But conversely, wealth also produces marriage.